They used to call me a disgrace. At that summer barbecue, I showed up like a shadow. No one greeted me. No one pulled up a chair. My sister's dog had a seat, but I didn't. The table buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, names thrown around like party favors, but mine was never among them. They said I was the cautionary tale, the daughter who flew too high and crashed. Not to my face, of course, just loud enough for the neighbors to hear. My mother told them I worked some clerical job somewhere with that smile, the one that pretends to pity while slicing right through your spine. What they didn't know is that I never stopped working. I just disappeared because that was the only way to survive. I was flipping dry ribs on the grill when my sister's new boyfriend walked into the yard. Tall, square-jawed, crisp agency polo. He glanced past me like I was part of the fence. Then he stopped, squinted, took a step closer, and said quietly, "Director Blake, ma'am, I served under you at Langley." The tongs in my hand almost dropped. No one at the table said a word. My mother's face went pale. My father's beer hovered midair. For once, they were all speechless. The daughter they dismissed had just been recognized by rank they couldn't even fathom. "My name is Grace Blake. I've been a soldier, an analyst, a strategist, and for a time director of a division no civilian will ever hear about. In silence, I outranked the very people who couldn't bother saving me a seat. And for the first time in years, they had no choice but to see me." That night, I returned to my apartment in Arlington, Virginia, the kind of place where even traffic noise feels filtered through layers of distance and isolation. The glow of my desk lamp barely touched the corners. In the left drawer, tucked beneath a soft gray scarf, lay my old badge. FBI Division A5, Director G. Blake. I hadn't looked at it in years, but tonight it caught the light just right, like it was daring me to remember. My phone buzzed. A single line appeared: "Fiona will be honored at the Federal Recognition Gala. Mom wants you to come. It's also Dad's 35th anniversary of service. No hi. No hope you're well. Just a sterile weather report delivered as an obligation." In the Blake family legacy wasn't pride, it was law. Dad Henry Blake once advised Homeland Security on counterterrorism strategy. Mom Linda Blake was a national award-winning teacher with plaques lining the walls. And Fiona, oh Fiona, federal prosecutor media darling, the golden child. And me? Once upon a time, I was the rising star. Started at the Department of Justice, rose fast, then transitioned into the Bureau. I wasn't a genius, just the one who saw what others missed. That's how I survived. That's how I became director. Then came Seattle, a failed hostage negotiation. One fatal mistake. The press tore me apart. One photo, one headline. And suddenly I was the woman who froze. My parents never asked what really happened. They didn't scream. They didn't scold. They simply disappeared. But I wasn't fired. I wasn't disgraced. I was reassigned off record to a covert unit reporting directly to the Attorney General. I led Operation Sentinel, one of the most classified missions in domestic intelligence history. I never told them, and maybe they never wanted to know. My mother's message still sat there. No follow-up, no little smiley face trying to soften the blow. Just a line, just a task. A reminder in this family I was the extra in a story that wasn't mine. The Blakes never actually said, "You're no longer part of this family." They didn't have to. They removed my stocking from the fireplace at Christmas. They left my name off the graduation program at my niece's ceremony. They told neighbors I worked somewhere behind a desk with that half-sincere tone that suggested I was answering phones at a car rental counter. And now they wanted me there for Fiona's big night, for Dad's federal recognition. I wasn't shocked. Love was never their language, performance was. To them, milestones weren't celebrations, they were stages, and I was never cast. I looked at myself in the mirror. Lines creased the corners of my eyes, not from frowning, but from squinting too long into other people's expectations. No one called me Gracie anymore. No one asked if I still skipped breakfast. I was Director Blake, now a title that became both shield and scar. I didn't need their approval, not anymore. But I would go, not because I expected warmth, not because I believed they'd changed. I was going to see whether they could still recognize me when I stood in front of them as the woman they tried to erase. I was getting ready to leave quietly when I saw him cutting through the crowd with purpose, like he had a compass wired to his spine. Broad-shouldered FBI dress uniform, crisp expression, dead serious. Reed Carson, one of mine. I hadn't seen him since our final Sentinel debrief. He was younger then, more reserved, but sharp, always sharp. He stopped just short of my table and spoke loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Director Blake, I served under you. It's an honor to see you again." The room went completely still. My mother's wine glass froze midair. Fiona's head snapped in my direction. My father's hands paused in mid-applause. I didn't rise. I didn't smile. I met Reed's gaze and gave the smallest nod. "Thank you, Agent Carson." He saluted, not grand, just protocol, but in that room full of people who thought I didn't matter, it rang louder than any mic. I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I wasn't the name left off the list. I was Director Blake, and they had just been forced to remember. Reed waited for me just beyond the velvet curtain in the dim hallway behind the auditorium. He wasn't smiling. I knew instantly this wasn't a social call. "We've got a situation," he said in a low voice. "There's been an unauthorized access to WitnessNet. The breach originated here, Cincinnati office." My breath didn't hitch, but my stomach coiled tight. WitnessNet wasn't just data. It was the lifeline for federal witness protection. No leaks. No second chances. "Show me," I said. He handed me a tablet already unlocked. The access log scrolled by until one line made my fingers turn cold. "Device registered to Fiona Blake." I met Samuel Whitaker in the first-floor cafe of the federal building, not because it was private, but because it was too public for anyone to record anything real. He reached out with a handshake too firm, calculated, like he was measuring control, not offering respect. "Grace Blake," he said, smile pre-packaged. "Fiona talks about you all the time. Bit of a legend, I hear." I didn't return the compliment. I just stared. "She's the brightest light in our office." He went on, stirring his coffee in slow, precise circles. "She's got heart, integrity, maybe a little naive, but endearing." "Naive," I said flatly, "isn't a compliment in this building." He chuckled. "Oh, Director Blake, no one keeps their halo intact forever." I said nothing. Sometimes silence reveals more than speech ever could. When I walked out of that cafe, it wasn't his words that weighed on me. It was the certainty in my gut Whitaker knew more than he let on. And he was hiding something. My phone buzzed. Text from Reed. "Sending something. You're not going to like it." The file came seconds later, grainy footage from a parking garage camera. Dated 3 weeks ago. Whitaker appeared first looking around like a man who knew better. Then from the shadows, someone else stepped into frame. Tan trench coat, silver hair, tall, unmistakable. Orson Gray, flagged in Operation Iron Maze, disappeared in 2014, and now he was here shaking Whitaker's hand like old colleagues, or co-conspirators, and Fiona worked under Whitaker. I stared at the screen, pulse steady but sharp. If Orson Gray had stepped back into daylight, this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. I met Fiona at Candela, an old forgotten FBI training site buried under decades of dust and classification. To the public, it was condemned. To me, it used to be sanctuary, a quiet, safe house for agents too deep in the field to surface. I stood in the cracked asphalt lot as the wind scraped against the hollow remains of what once was. Dust and silence, all familiar. Fiona pulled in driving a dented rental, low heels buttoned blazer as if that fabric could shield her from what was coming. She hesitated when she saw me. I didn't let her speak. I handed her a file, thick, sealed in an old briefing envelope. "You're protecting him, right?" She opened it. Her eyes scanned the first page, then jumped to the photo clipped on top, grainy, time-stamped, but unmistakable. A man in tactical gear gun raised a family kneeling, blood smeared on cement. "That's him," she whispered. "Whitaker told me he was a survivor, escaped the cartel, had intelligence." "He didn't escape," I cut in. He commanded. Her face went pale. I reached into my coat and pulled out a small encrypted recorder. Hit play. Whitaker's voice crackled through. "She's our most valuable pawn. Feed her just enough truth to keep her righteous. She's young, idealistic. The system will chew her up before she even realizes who she's protecting." Fiona didn't argue. She didn't cry. Just silence, the kind that happens when something inside shatters clean through. "I just wanted to help someone," she said. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't soften, not now. Saving someone without knowing who dies because of it, that's not justice, Fiona. That's blindness." She turned her face away, shoulders shrinking inward, not like a lawyer in control, but like the little sister I used to hold when the world hurt too much. My mother called 2 days later, her voice light, like the years between us hadn't been swallowed by silence. "It's time we sat down together," she said, "like a family." I didn't believe her for a second, but I said yes. Sometimes the fastest way to find the trap is to walk right into it. We met at the old house in Oak Ridge, the one I grew up in, where every wall held secrets no one dared say out loud. The furniture had been rearranged. The dining room gleamed. It all looked like home, but the scent of lemon cleaner and tightly wound silence told the real story. My father greeted me with a wide smile, the kind that never reached the eyes. Fiona barely glanced at me. Cold, sharp, measuring. Before dinner, I stepped into my old bedroom. Everything was exactly where I'd left it, too exactly. My photo from the day I was sworn into the DOJ now sat centered on the desk. The frame was new, the dust around it undisturbed. A prop for tonight's performance. I wasn't impressed. On my way back to the table, I paused outside the hallway vent, caught my father's voice low and sharp. "She'll be here. After tonight, I want out." I wasn't the first person they rehearsed this scene for. Someone else was pulling strings behind the curtain. Dinner was served: roasted chicken, scalloped potatoes, Merlot wine no one actually liked, but always kept for show. Conversation drifted between golf church and safe, shallow pleasantries until my father cleared his throat and placed a thick envelope in the center of the table. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said. "We know what you've been doing." I opened it. Inside were forged documents, doctored WitnessNet files that painted me as a rogue whistleblower seeking redemption. A false narrative built from betrayal. "Where did you get these?" I asked. Fiona's voice was sharper than the steak knives. "How long have you been following me?" "I wasn't following you," I said. "I was protecting you." By planting surveillance tech on me, she snapped, yanking off the health tracker I'd given her and throwing it onto the table like it was poisoned. Dinner was over, the performance was done, and the room was about to become a war zone. I didn't get a word out before the lights cut. 1 beat later, the front door exploded inward. Splintering wood. Heavy boots pounding tile. The house transformed into a war zone in less than 3 seconds. 3 men stormed in, masked, dressed in dark tactical gear. Their rifles weren't raised, but their eyes were. "She's the target," one of them barked, pointing straight at me. "She knows too much," another said, nodding toward Fiona and my parents. The rest no longer useful. I didn't scream. I didn't freeze. I let myself fall backward, crashing off my chair like I'd been yanked, but my thumb had already found the seam. That tiny ridge stitched beneath the cuff of my blazer. I pressed it. A silent signal. No sound. No flash. But enough for Reed Carson to know I was compromised. I'd never expected Fiona to wear the tracker forever. I knew she'd rip it off, so I built redundancy. Layer 2 sewn into the fabric of my coat. A last resort distress beacon activated under duress. One of the intruders grabbed me by the arm, yanking me up. Cold fingers, colder barrel pressing against my skull. You think we wouldn't find you, he hissed. Grace Blake, traitor to the cause. I never joined your cause, I ground out. Exactly, he said. Which is why you disappear now. I closed my eyes for a single second. Long enough to count. Long enough to realize if they'd meant to kill me, they would have done it already. This wasn't execution, it was theater. A staged attack, a fabricated manifesto, a doctored tape. They wanted to frame it, make it look like an internal extremist act. But what they didn't account for was that I'd already triggered my trap while they thought they had sprung theirs. They tied me to an old steel support beam in the basement, the same room where I used to play as a child, now my holding cell. The ropes dug into my wrists. Not the sloppy kind, the tactical kind. Done by people who knew restraint wasn't just physical, it was psychological. I listened closely. Upstairs, the floorboards creaked. My mother's breath was shallow. Fiona said nothing, but I knew she was still there. She was still in the game, still a variable. One of the masked men came closer, crouched down, tugged his mask just slightly below his nose. You were the one behind Operation Sentinel, right? He said with an almost admiring sneer. I followed your work. Then you vanished. I looked him dead in the eye. I wasn't gone. I was selected to vanish. He smirked. Well, you're not invisible anymore. In my ear, the subdermal receiver hidden in my collar buzzed. Reed's voice crackled through. Grace the Mole is Victor Crane. He leaked your location. He gave your father those fake WitnessNet files. My pulse didn't spike, but my lungs held still. Crane. The man I blocked from promotion after he doctored evidence. He knew the systems. He knew me. And more dangerously, he knew how to weaponize trust. Outside, I heard faint movement. Backup was closing in, but this house was wired, and I was running out of time. Then my father, Henry Blake, stepped into the basement. Face expressionless, shoulders stiff with effort to maintain his usual arrogance. You're really going to die for people who never believed in you, he asked. For us. I didn't look at him. Not for you. So I don't become who you always believed I was. Behind me a soft shuffle. Fiona. She knelt beside me, eyes wide but clear, holding out a small control device. I swiped it from Crane before they tied me up, she whispered. You don't have to do this alone. For the first time, I didn't see her as someone trailing behind me. I saw her standing beside me on her own feet. 10 days after the raid, I walked into the congressional hearing room. No medals on my chest, no flag behind me, no press. Just my name engraved on the placard in front of me. Grace Blake, Director, FBI Division A5. I didn't begin with a war story. I didn't start with a list of operations. I began with a question soft but sharp. Why is it we believe silence equals guilt? When did perception become truth? No one answered. No one interrupted. I let the silence stretch like a fault line beneath the room. Then I looked straight at the Oversight Committee chair, the man who signed the order that stripped me of command. When the system wants to bury someone, I said it doesn't need a trial. It only needs a rumor. I laid everything out. Maria's decrypted evidence, Reed's documented chain of custody, Fiona's corroboration, every file, every whisper, every forged directive. But I didn't stand there as a victim. I didn't ask for my rank back. I told the truth. I was part of the system. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. I compromised under the flag of duty. That's on me. I didn't ask to be reinstated. I proposed something more dangerous. Transfer WitnessNet oversight to an independent civilian board. No party influence. No re-election pressure. Just eyes that don't flinch. There was pushback, loud, predictable, until I played the final clip footage from a pin camera embedded in Crane's office lamp. His face, his voice. A cash transaction tied to a fake nonprofit, the Veil's laundering front. They arrested him as the feed ended. He didn't fight. He turned to me pale and beaten and said, "You win this time." I didn't answer. He no longer had space in my mind. After the hearing, my mother approached me in the hallway. No apology. Just If you're what the system couldn't face, maybe I've had my eyes closed too long too. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a crack. And in my father's hands, a photo from my DOJ appointment now in a new frame. At the bottom, etched in brass. Grace Blake never erased. I left Capitol Hill with no applause, no flashbulbs, no headlines. What I carried wasn't a victory, it was a new assignment, blueprinting a secure federal data network. This time, not for glory, but for the forgotten. I didn't stay in D.C., I turned down the interviews, the memoir deals, the Netflix pitches. I didn't need to be retold. I had already lived it. I moved to a small town near the Arizona border where the sun doesn't ask your name and the wind doesn't care what you used to be. There I taught classes, sat on school boards, spoke to teenagers who thought justice was something with a soundtrack. I told them, justice doesn't play music. It lives in quiet decisions, especially the ones no one sees. One afternoon I got an email from Fiona. Subject, I'm not scared anymore. She attached a photo. Her on stage at a witness protection summit. Not as the case study, as the speaker, as the architect of reform, I replied. I always believed in you, but what matters more now is that you believe in yourself. That night I sat in my little home office. No flag, no intercom, just a wooden shelf and a folded truth. On that shelf the original Veil file, still sealed. Not because I was hiding it, but because I needed to remember. Justice isn't a moment, it's a process. Now when people ask me what I do, I just smile. I used to work inside the system. Now I stand outside of it so I can see it more clearly. Not all victories are loud. Some arrive in silence, in dignity, in the power to begin again, this time on your own terms.